Consider this. More than half of all Americans either own or work for a small business. Quite a statistic considering that all new small businesses in America still close their doors within the first 5 years. How can we maximize the success of small business here in Central Illinois? Stay put for some insights. I'm Yvonne Greer, and my guests are Jeff Griffin, president of the Peoria Area Chamber of Commerce, and Sahn. He is the chair of the Peoria chapter of the business mentoring group SCORE. And it's all next, right here on Consider This. I would imagine that when most of us think business, we think large corporation business. So I believe this conversation should begin with a distinction between what differentiates a small business from a larger corporation. Jeff Griffin from the Peoria Area Chamber, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. So the difference, locally, obviously the Caterpillars and the hospitals, there are larger employers and businesses. On the national level, we know over half of the businesses are considered small businesses. On the local, we look at 85% of our chamber membership, and we have 1,000 members, 85% have 25 or fewer employees. So on a local level, we consider them all to be small businesses at that level.
Got it. So when we're talking about small business, give us a sense of what is the small business climate like here in Central Illinois. I know some of the Caterpillar layoffs have got people just a little bit nervous because nobody wants to see anybody out of work,
right.
And that has sort of a trickle-down effect on the economy. But I would imagine that small businesses still need to survive and flourish, and what does it look like today?
Well, I consider it to be pretty vibrant in terms of interest. We know, so Caterpillar is a good example. Some folks that have moved from Caterpillar have started something new, and there's talented people who may have never considered investing their time and energy and resources into a new small business, but because of circumstances they are. And so we wrap a lot of support around them. And we know the importance. Over half the jobs created every year are created through small businesses.
And Sahn from the Peoria chapter of SCORE, and also a past Peoria Chamber of Commerce president. What has been your experience just in this recent change in our small business climate? Have there been more people coming saying, all right, I've been working for a larger corporation and now I want to give it a go? Do you find that there's an influx now of people who are looking to start small businesses?
I think so. We see that there's a fair amount of opportunity that is created in this environment. You think things are not going quite so well, but that's really when people who have an entrepreneurial spirit sort of dig in and get involved. We're seeing it in two levels. One is we're a volunteer organization, and so as there have been increased layoffs from Caterpillar, it's increased the interest among many people who have been affected by that in volunteering and being involved in sharing a little bit of their knowledge and expertise with others. So on the volunteer side, things are enhanced. But then on the other side, for those who are seeking to get into business or to grow a business, we're finding that there's a pretty substantial demand that is developing within our community, and it appears to be that it's all over the map. It's so many different areas and fields. It's service businesses, retail, and just all sorts of creative activity. Not to mention the technology piece, which is something that is becoming much more of a significant growth industry in Peoria.
Just at dinner conversations, or if you happen to be hanging out with friends, you hear people say all the time, if I were going to start a business, I would do X, Y, or Z. What sets those apart as far as having that entrepreneurial spirit? How do you know if you are the type of person who would do well in business?
Well, that's something that we examine when we meet with people. We meet on a mentoring basis. It's usually one-on-one or one-on-two. Totally confidential. It's totally free. So there are really few barriers to becoming involved with as a client of SCORE. And we go through that evaluation with someone and basically don't make the decision for them, but ask enough questions and get them thinking about what's happening in their lives and in their interests and with their skill sets and all of that and other resources, to be able to really determine whether this is something that will actually work. But it all starts with an idea. And we encourage people to dream and to come up with those ideas. We talk about it. I often say to people, well, you could have this conversation with your brother-in-law over the dinner table if you wanted to, but you can also come to SCORE, where there's no judgmental approach at all. It's just a matter of talking about it and working through it, helping them develop a business plan, and introducing some discipline in the system. And what separates one from another is that discipline and being willing to make the commitment and to take some risk. But it really comes down to, I find it's a matter of just having a disciplined approach. And if you are, you can be successful.
Yes, and in my research and having this conversation, I stumbled upon the top 10 reasons why those small businesses fail in less than 5 years. And numbers 1, 2, and 3 on the list were experience, insufficient capital, and poor location. Experience, what I would imagine, would affect just about everybody because you've never done it before. How do you get that experience? Do you start with some place like SCORE? Do you sort of shadow somebody who's in the industry?
Right, so the model we have locally, and we're very fortunate because our Chamber of Commerce and SCORE, we're officed together, and not all the chambers across the country and SCORE have the relationship we have. And others do, but ours is really solid, right? So experience, what were the 3?
Experience, insufficient capital, and poor location.
So what John was talking about, they don't talk people out of doing business or opening a business, but have a long enough conversation with them that if it turns out that's not the right business to launch, that's decided before people go into debt over a dream, you know?
Yeah, so if you're thinking, maybe I would love to be a, waffle cone maker or whatever.
That's a good example,
and then you
right?
realize the work that goes into it, maybe I don't want to.
Right, because the work that goes into it is more sophisticated than the conversation with your brother-in-law over Thanksgiving dinner, right?
Yes.
Not that he's not well intended, but we can get him in touch with the banking and the business plan and what banks are looking for in the business plan, locations. It's all that objective, supportive information. And some people that come decide not to open their business, or they may be back in 18 months with a different idea. But we can start them with SCORE, connect them with the banks, and then, of course, we have all the ongoing services the Chamber offers to small businesses to keep them moving.
So let's say I've done my homework and I've been to SCORE and I found out that, yes, this is something I really want to pursue. I create my business plan and then I need to get funding. What is that process like?
We're often involved as sort of a partner in that process because someone will go to the bank and say, I'd like to borrow some money to do X, Y, or Z. The bank will say, where's your business plan? And then if they don't have it, then they refer them to SCORE, and we work through the process of developing the business plan so that they can then have a well-developed business plan, not just an idea, but something that is written down and demonstrates that they've thought about all potential aspects of the business. That's really what the bank is looking for. And if they've gone through the process with us, and if they've thought about it sufficiently, it usually flushes out a lot of the issues that will prevent making mistakes, like location, for example, where you just haven't really understood quite exactly what the parameters of determining a location are. But once you do, and if you have done that thoroughly and adequately in advance, you don't make the mistake. And so the idea is, with a good business plan, is to anticipate all of the pitfalls and all the potential problems that may exist out there. If you think through it in advance, if you have a good plan, the odds of success are significantly improved.
Now, when you go to buy a house, they say at the banks, well, you need to have a certain percentage to put down. Do you need to have something like that if you're going to start a small business? What if I have no money, but I have this wonderful idea and a great plan to back it up?
It's called skin in the game, and there is an expectation that there will be skin in the game. All the bankers will approach it that way, and individual investors too. They want that person to have a commitment that goes beyond just simply an enthusiasm or a desire. And so but it varies. I mean, it depends on who the lender is as to how much you have to put in. But for the most part, they're looking at 20% or so that the individual put in behind the business, put that at risk, just to demonstrate that there is that level of commitment to follow through on the plan, stick with it, and make it work.
So now I have my plan, I have my loan, I have my location, door is open, I call the chamber and I say, all right, partner up.
We have a ribbon cutting.
What happens next? How does the chamber help me as a small business owner?
Right, so one of the things we've added, we could do another show completely on that topic, but one thing we've added over the last 18 months are free membership seminars. So a small business, the investment to the Chamber of Commerce may be as low as $300 a year. And if you have access, so we have attorneys and insurance experts and technology experts, all members of the Chamber of Commerce, and they put on professional seminars for their fellow members, free of charge. So small businesses don't have access to sophisticated human resources. So they need each other, they need us. And if we do a cybersecurity seminar, for example, a small business that's doing transactions every day can learn a great deal about how to protect themselves and how to ensure their resources, not only from protecting the point of sale, but how do you ensure yourself in case something does go wrong and your system is invaded and so forth. Department of Labor has come down with new rules recently, and we've had attorneys present to the members. So if you go to 10 of those free seminars a year, you've really
It's quite an education.
It is, and then from those seminars, not only are they getting the education, but they're in a room with 50 other people, and they may not know those folks. So if you like making waffles, and John likes making
chicken and waffles,
and you're both growing a business together, you have a new resource to call, a new friend, a new professional friend, and that whole network just keeps growing and growing and growing.
And talk about your growing network. The Peoria Chamber does so much. Tell me about your advocacy efforts. I mean, you represent the collective interests of business in our community.
Right. So on the state level, we work for workers' compensation reform. We've opposed the minimum wage, which is a controversial issue, but we believe small businesses, a small independently owned restaurant doesn't have the same resources as a national chain, and a massive increase in minimum wage could be a killer for them, and that's not an argument against paying people a fair wage, but it's keeping government from not being so intrusive. As there's enough obstacles for small businesses to start, we don't need government, sinking in too much.
Got it.
So those are some of the big broad issues. And then if folks have individual struggles or hurdles, so for example, the city of Peoria has been great with the planning and zoning and so forth, real easy to work with. But if you haven't been through that process, it may be intimidating when a building inspector comes. And intimidating is probably the wrong word, but you're just not familiar with the process. And we can help that small business navigate that system because Mayor Artis and his team work with us, and then we can make that happen for the small business.
You also have a community leadership school.
We do.
What does that entail?
So the Community Leadership School has been around for this is the 42nd year, consecutive year, which is fantastic. And that is, again, a big networking tool. So you get there to be part of a 40-member class, and you spend about 2.5 months of every Friday visiting. You visit Springfield, you visit City Hall, you visit you visit other businesses, and it's really a crash course in Peoria. So if you're new to Peoria, it's really, because I went through it, it's really educational. And even if you've been in Peoria, you're going to learn stuff about Peoria and how things operate in a different way.
So we live in a climate where you can get so much online. At the time of this taping, it's just before the holiday season begins in full thrust, and some small business owners I know are concerned about the number of people who shop online. And we have Small Business Saturday here in Central Illinois that works so well. What advice do you give them at SCORE about being able to stay competitive in light of the fact that you can get almost anything anywhere at the click of a mouse?
It's a good question. Certainly providing a good quality service with good customer relations and contact is something that people appreciate, and they will come back for more to receive the benefit of that. It is challenging, though, no question about it, functioning in this environment. It really, though, depends on the type of business that you have. If you're in retail, certainly, then those are issues that you have. But if you're in a service business, something that you provide in a one-on-one basis with someone, not so much. I mean, then in those circumstances, it's the relationship that you develop with the customer that allows you to grow your business and expand it in our market. And I think those who maintain as I said earlier, a very strong discipline and maintain those relationships with their customers, they will do well, even in the face of all of the challenges that exist with people operating online and doing businesses in a much different way today than before.
And I would like to follow up on the service issue. Just as a gal in Peoria who listens to her friends talk about going to various entities for shopping or dining or whatever, the complaint that you usually get, if you get one, is about service. And as a small business owner, I would imagine that that's perhaps, I'm just putting myself in their shoes, perhaps a venue that you haven't yet considered. Because if you're focusing on, well, I have this restaurant and now I've got the kitchen set up and I've got the dining room set up and the business plan is already in place, and now you have to have that human connection, service-driven sort of component. Where does that education come from?
Well, that's extremely important, and some of it can come through the educational process, as Jeff is describing. Seminars. We operate a workshop at least one a month that provides training for people on a variety of subjects, and there's no cost involved. It's very simple to come in and partake, and many of those do deal with HR issues and that sort of thing. But just referring to your earlier question about location, some people rush to decide to determine a location for their business, when in fact that's something that really comes down the road. There are issues like human resources and staffing and creating an appropriate governance model and the financing piece. All those things should come first before, in my view, before you get to the point of talking about a location. But it is very seductive when you're thinking about a business to think about, I want it there in that location, when in fact there are all those other issues that are so critical to the success of a business that you have to understand and work on and develop adequately. We had a seminar put on by a restaurant operator here in Peoria who has been extremely successful in human resources. He knows how to manage people. He knows how to incentivize and to obtain commitment from them, and he's been very successful. A lot of growth has occurred, and he has shared that information with others. Those who sat in on his presentation, I think, gained a great deal in understanding just how it works and how you can be successful with staff.
And I know the saying goes, so goes the leader, so goes the team. But what if I am an amazing cybersecurity expert and I am not at all comfortable dealing with other people myself, and I'm the front man? What then?
You
hire a front man?
You do. I mean, you hire the resources. You take any business where you have a particular skill in an area, you know something about it. I practiced law for most of my life, and so you know the law, but you're not necessarily qualified to do all the business aspects of it, or all aspects of the law. Maybe some, but not all. So you acquire those talents, and there are resources available that you can tap, and this community is full of them because there's a lot of skill and talented people. Many of them Caterpillar folks who have been there before, who are willing to share their knowledge and information. Many of them are volunteers with SCORE. And so you can tap those resources and you can acquire those resources to fill in all the gaps, all the spaces and areas that you need in order to be successful.
We really are fortunate in that our community is rich with so many different professionals who can assist and provide this level of education for those coming up the ranks. And I should say congratulations to the Peoria Area Chamber of Commerce for winning the Outstanding Chamber of the Year award.
Thank you.
Pretty good coming from your peers, huh?
It was. It was a huge honor. It was really cool about that award. We were nominated and then blind judged by neighboring states. So it was a huge honor for our team, for the whole community.
That's terrific. So tell us what's ahead for the Chamber. Are there any new initiatives underway?
So chambers of commerce are in a state of evolution, right? So we as a chambers of commerce industry need to remain relevant to the next generation of folks. Because chambers have been around for over 100 years. But millennials, for example, although all my staff are millennials, so I dispute that millennials don't care about chambers. There's so many ways to plug in. Like you said, shopping online didn't exist when, it used to be just your right of being a citizen was you join the Chamber of Commerce. That's not the case anymore, so we need to be providing value. And in doing so, I believe it's this access to resources. And I consider, we can put on a party and have a dance. I need you to come onto the dance floor with us to have a good time and take that next step. We have, like John Sahn and the whole army of past board chairs and past retirees who are willing to give of their time and resources. So access to information. And this is not Jeff Griffin being boastful, but I sit in a position where if I get a phone call and somebody needs something, and whether that's at City Hall, County, Springfield, or Washington, D.C., I could pick up the phone and get a response from people because they believe in what we do. So to answer your question, what's next? I think growing our young professionals group. we're now working more with public school systems, with all school systems, not only for quality of life issues, to attract more people to Peoria and preserve and improve our neighborhoods, and creating that future workforce. So we don't just sit around, cut ribbons, and have banquets every once in a while. You know, we're really trying to keep our hands dirty and help people.
And what's on the forefront in the business minds of these young business professionals? Because I know you mentioned millennials, and there seems to be an energy there. They want to make a difference. They want to be known as a generation that does something. What is the something?
Well, you know what? I think it's as varied as
the individuals?
Really, because our young professionals group is about 400 members, and when they have a social event or any event, you know, they get a good number of people. You have doctors in there. Our young professionals is 21 to 40. So, you know, there's a wide range between a 21-year-old and a 40-year-old. So they get off into their little social circles. But we have doctors and lawyers, and then folks with an idea that are entrepreneurs. And I mean, that's the group that wrapped around with the All-American City, and a lot of people participated in that. But the team was the Young Professionals group that went to Denver and brought that award home. So I have a great deal of optimism for our future.
Terrific. And for someone who might be interested, John, in becoming a SCORE volunteer, are there criteria? Do they need to have been in business themselves for a certain period of time, or just have expertise in a particular field or industry?
You know, previously, SCORE was known, actually it's an acronym that stands for Service Corps of Retired Executives. And today that is no longer the case. It is SCORE for the life of your business, and we've dropped the retired executive piece of it because we're attracting younger people and a lot of employed people to work with SCORE and to provide volunteering, many of them millennials, who really are interested in involvement and contributing back to the community by providing mentoring and other business-related services. It's a matter of going on our website, www.score.org, and signing up. And we go through there's a bit of a training process. You have to sign an ethics statement to pledge confidentiality in all relationships that you have and no conflicts of interest and that sort of thing. But once you go through that, it's a matter of identifying the skills that you have and the interests that you have and matching them up with those who apply for mentoring or for some support in some fashion. So we try to identify if someone calls up and they need legal assistance. I often get the call to do that. If it's accounting, it's someone else, and marketing and so on. So there are a variety of things that can be done, and there are lots of skill sets out there that we can tap into. So it's very simple to get into the process.
And congratulations are in order for you two as well. I know SCORE just celebrated 51 years now of being a Peoria chapter. That's amazing.
It is. SCORE actually started in 1964, and there are 360 chapters around the United States. Ours was the 90th one formed in 1965 or 66. So we have a very, very long tenure of people who have, in this community, who have provided service on a variety of levels for all kinds of businesses, and of course many people also who have volunteered along the way. So it's, we're very proud of having that length of service to the community.
And I know underneath any business, the heart of it is the people that make up that business. Do you find that with people's experiences and coming together at the chamber for various meetings and events, and people coming together for SCORE, for volunteerism and receiving that knowledge and mentorship, do you find that personal relationships develop that last them over the course of their businesses and lives?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We all know the small businesses in town that you know and you love and you shop at, and you associate that with probably somebody, and they're usually there and they're proud of their business and so forth. And I'll give you an example since he's retired, and I'm not giving a free plug here, but Frank Abnauer, Spotted Cow, just sold his business, right? He's been involved with our Government Affairs Committee. Frank's passionate about small business and started with an ice cream wagon. So when we had the dispute in town about food trucks and restaurants and so forth, and some restaurants didn't want food trucks at all, we also had an entrepreneur spirit like Frank saying, you know what, maybe that food truck could become a bricks and mortar building at some point. So you have that tremendous amount of resource, and then passing that torch to the next ownership of that business. And you see that time and time again, where I believe if I'm having a plumber come to my house, I want to know that person. I don't care what I'm doing. I want to know the person I'm doing business with. And I believe that's never going to go away. And a venue of 1,000 chamber members, and I want to double that. I want to be larger. That you can't put a price tag on those relationships.
Very well said. Thank you very much. And that concludes our conversation here in Consider This. Thank you both for being with us very, very much. Jeff Griffin from the Peoria Area Chamber of Commerce and John Sahn from SCORE Business Mentorship. Thank you both very much. Very enlightening. And that leaves me feeling encouraged about the future of small business here in Central Illinois. I hope it does the same for you. I'm Yvonne Greer. Thanks for watching.